on the way I viewed life. And she was my 6th grade history teacher, Miss Davis. And you can believe me that in the 6th grade, kids were not too happy having to study history. Miss Davis was so enthusiastic when she presented her subject that if you wanted to sit on the front row, you better wear a raincoat, because the spittle was going to come out of her mouth with her words. Inevitably, the kids would say, "Miss Davis, why do we have to study this boring history?" And Miss Davis, in great but simple wisdom, said, "So we don't make the same mistakes that our forefathers did." As I grew and matured, that took on even greater significance as I started paying attention to our world leaders, our elected officials. Back during that time, we had George Wallace, and we had the Civil Rights Movement. And I would think to myself, these people needed Miss Davis for a teacher. Sadly, our nation's leaders, from national leaders to our, I hate to say it, but our bigoted leaders here in Alabama, and throughout the South, they continue to make the same ignorant, stupid decisions that they've made in centuries, not just decades, but in centuries past. They've never studied history, they've never learned anything from history. So our nation, as a result of that, has enjoyed a total of less than 20 years of no conflict in our history. We have been in constant conflict with somebody on this planet for the majority of our history. If we look back to the west here, not far from us is a town called Selma, Alabama. All around the world you mention Selma, and that's known for civil rights movement. The racism that was prevalent, and unfortunately still is prevalent in Alabama, because even being against homosexuals and gays is a form of racism.
What you do in darkness?
The marches that took place over that bridge, and that is what we think of when we hear the name of Selma. In that same town, there's a little known fact about Alabama that for some reason they don't want to teach in our history books. And once I tell you this story, you'll begin to understand why you didn't learn this in public school in Alabama. There have been 47 vice presidents in all of America's 238 years, spanning from John Adams to Joe Biden. But only one of these vice presidents called Alabama home. That was one William Rufus Devane King. And I bet few, if any of you, ever heard of that name. King, first of all, Alabama became a state in the year 1819, and Rufus King was tapped to help write the Constitution of this state. He went on to serve 4 terms as U.S. Senator, representing Alabama in Washington. He was appointed the U.S. Minister to France by President John Tyler. He was noted for his oratory, and perhaps best known for wearing long wigs. One Alabama historian called him tall, prim, wig top, mediocrity. President Andrew Jackson called him Miss Nancy. And others, of course, mocked him. Our 15th President of the United States, James Buchanan, who like King remained unmarried all his life, lived with King for 15 years. So close was their relationship that even the postmaster in D.C. referred to them as Buchanan and his wife. And I think you know where I'm going with this story. The highest elected official ever from Alabama was a homosexual. And he was sworn into office while he was in Cuba seeking health care. and he's buried in that mausoleum over in Selma, Alabama. It's a very small little mausoleum. When you enter the Live Oak Cemetery, the main entrance, there's a little mausoleum off to the right. It's nondescript, and a very little plaque describes who he was. But if you do an internet search, you're going to be shocked to see who the highest elected official was from Alabama, known for wearing wigs, known as Miss Nancy. Kind of reminds you of somebody that helped promote these events here, doesn't it?
Thank you.
That is a compliment. The Senate Historical Office describes the two, King and Buchanan, as the Siamese twins. So there lies the highest elected official ever from Alabama. Now, when they died, most of their letters were burned by their families to protect their reputations, I'm sure. But there was no question that our highest ranking official ever from this state was a closeted homosexual that also helped to draft the Alabama Constitution. And there's no doubt that Roy Moore and our conservative clergy of this state has no clue as to history. And if they do, they certainly have no qualms about repeating it and repeating the horrible mistakes that our forefathers have made. Equality is not just about same-sex marriage. People my age know that for real. We've had this fight, especially in Alabama and in the South, for decades. I remember the for whites only sign, not just in laundromats and restaurants, bathrooms, water fountains. This is deja vu for us. It's not new. Unfortunately, Christianity and religion as we know it today is bedfellows with racism and bigotry. Slavery was strongly supported by the institutionalized religion of Christianity. The same holy book that Christians live by today was used in support of keeping the African Americans enslaved. Well, regardless of all the history we have to draw from, we stand here today in the second decade of the 21st century dealing with this same ignorance, the ignorance promoted in the name of that same God. When these lawsuits were filed, that eventually has led us to this moment, but first of all led us to same-sex marriage being legal across this nation. A lot of people don't realize that the two that brought these suits were not seeking to get married in Alabama. They were seeking only to have their marriage recognized in Alabama because they had been married previously in another state. Why this was not discussed in detail by our media and whatnot, but the law was pretty much already in effect. Because it was already said that if you got married in one state, it had to be recognized in all states. Otherwise, even every heterosexual couple, every time they moved to a different state, would have to get remarried. It's not a very effective system at all. So it was no doubt that this was going to come about in this great nation of ours. Let's talk about the marriage license itself. I'm going to take the romance out of the marriage license. That's sad because I marry a lot of people. None of the founding fathers had a marriage license. The marriage license didn't come into existence until the mid-1800s. And it started out as a racist document. It started out as a racist document because in each state constitution, not the national constitution, but the state constitution, it was unconstitutional to marry outside your race. You may have seen or heard that there was a gentleman up in Virginia that was actually in prison for living with a black lady. So in the mid-1800s, some of the more liberal states decided that if you'll pay us a fee, we'll license you to marry that African American or that Asian. I'll give you guys one guess as to which state was the last to take it out of their constitution.
Alabama.
Anybody there?
Alabama.
Alabama. Anybody care to guess what year they took it out of their constitution? 2000. We were the last in the nation. And I know you people that like me grew up in this state are not very surprised by that. We don't look at the term progressive very properly in Alabama. They turn progressive into a negative. They want to live in ancient archaic times of ignorance instead of getting with us in the future where equality actually means something. Equality is not a white face and a male body. I was blessed in my life. You're looking at a white man, the best thing that could possibly happen to anybody's birth in this nation. But I know a lot of people, I've associated a lot of people, I have empathy with people that do not share the privilege that I have. So it's been my lifelong journey in helping people. I never planned this last part of my career. It just so happened that there weren't many like me in Alabama to serve, and all of a sudden I became a little bit well known against my own desire. So now I cannot have any fun because my picture's all over the internet. And unlike some of my friends across the way here, I am a sinner. So let it be known that our nation is a secular nation. No mention of the Bible, no mention of Jesus or the Ten Commandments is found anywhere in our founding documents. Nowhere to be found. Our nation's Constitution allows that no religious test be given to any elected official. What does that tell you? It tells you that we keep our religion out of our government. Yet in reality, such a test exists, and we're experiencing that test that has been placed upon our elected officials. As the likes of Roy Moore get so much support in Alabama from people that would like to turn this into a theocracy. I don't know of too many that really think about it that want to live under a theocracy. It didn't look good in Iran. Didn't look good in Afghanistan, but we still want our moral police. At least some do. I, for one, am not with them. I'm for freedom. At most, when it comes to homosexuality, and this is a stretch, but I'll play devil's advocate for a moment. At most, the Bible condemns man lying with man. It's interesting that it's okay for a woman to lie with a woman. And I guess that's why most men like to be voyeurs when that takes place. The state issued a piece of paper that we call a marriage license. It has a purpose, but it does not really create a marriage. I tell all my couples that marriage is created between two individuals in their heart. It's not a planned event. It's not something that you work out of desire. Most often you find your partner in life by pure accident, when least expected. Does anybody argue that? No. Anybody that's had a relationship, do you argue the fact that you found the one you love when you did not look for it, when you did not expect it?
When a man and a woman get married, you're going to hell.
Amen, brother.
What he says is true. There won't be any laughing in hell.
If those in office like Roy Moore have an issue with same-sex marriage, the ones in office are free to resign and go to work for their church. They need to find a position that better suits their conscience and stay out of our conscience. We, the citizens of Alabama, are no longer going to stand down. We're going to stand up. We're not going to allow ourselves to be intimidated or pushed to the back seat of the bus and denied a seat at the seat of a counter of equal rights. And in the same town over in Selma, There lies this highest elected official ever from Alabama, that homosexual that helped to write the Alabama Constitution, Rufus King. The same one that sought his health care in Cuba because he couldn't get in the United States. Anybody for universal health care? Rufus King should be enshrined in our history, and Roy Moore should be taken out of our history. Now I just want to remind everybody here. No more! No more! No more! No more! No more! No more! Remember this. Roy Moore has his supporters. If he's taken out of office, our fight is not done. Because there are hundreds, if not thousands, I'm sure, here in Alabama that agree wholeheartedly with him. And there are even some that wish he would crack down harder. So you can't give up. We got to fight. And remember, equality means that you have to allow people to do something that you may detest. So get over it.